Hello, my name is Frank Krebs. I'm the pastor at Saints Clare and Francis Ecumenical Catholic Community in St. Louis, Missouri, and the presiding bishop-elect of the Ecumenical Catholic Communion. Happy Easter to you and yours. A joyous Easter to you. I'd like to unpack some of the meaning of Easter by going right to the gospel stories about Easter. And before I look at the way those stories tell us of Jesus being raised from the dead, let's, as a background, keep in mind the other stories in the gospel where Jesus raised someone else from the dead. So he took the hand of a little girl who had died and lifted her back to life, and she was restored to her family. He called forth Lazarus from the tomb, who had been dead, in fact, all wrapped up, mummified, if you will, and then came back to life. Now, each of these persons in the story then were restored to their families, lived normal lives, and then died. So that's a different story than the resurrection. It's sort of I guess what we could call a resuscitation, coming back to life the way we normally think of our bodily lives. The resurrection is different from that. There are these paintings in the history of Christian art that will show Jesus coming bodily out of the tomb. But these are not the stories that are in the New Testament. The New Testament never shows Jesus in that way. Excuse me. Jesus appears in kind of a mysterious way. He doesn't look like he looked before he died. Yet the disciples clearly believed that they were experiencing Jesus as alive. That's a very different kind of story, resurrection. They knew, they trusted that Jesus was with them and that he was alive, but he was with them in a completely different way. This is what the Apostle Paul called the power of the resurrection. That is to say, the power that was in God that raised Jesus from the dead is inside of us, Paul says, so that we are able to be raised to a whole different way of living. We're able to more closely approximate the way we are intended to live as our truest selves because of this power that is hidden inside of us that allows us to become what otherwise we would not be able to become. That's the power of the resurrection. Now, this is all Christian terminology about a truth of life. Could it be that God created life for Christians that was different than God created life for everyone else? We don't think so. Great thinkers in the Christian tradition have consistently rejected this. The life that we have learned about because of our experience of Jesus is just simply life. It's helping us see life more deeply. And so the Armenians talk about this resurrection power. The Armenian Christians talk about this resurrection power in a really interesting way. One Armenian theologian I heard explained that Armenians typically have gardens in their backyard because they believe that in a simple garden, we see the signs of resurrection power. As a seed is in the ground and the ground lies completely silent during the winter, and then in the spring something bursts forth. In fact, I remember him describing how a turtle that was buried underground would raise its little head, and this would be a sign to everyone in the congregation of resurrection power. It's God's power in us, bringing us to our best selves, bringing us to some kind of newness. So what we believe is that no matter how dark things can be, that light is able to come forth. We believe that no matter how deep and vast the void is, the Big Bang is a possibility in the middle of that, bringing forth life in a way that never could have possibly been imagined. I'd like to share with you a wonderful poem by Pablo Neruda, this marvelous Latin American poet. And this, of course, is a translation. But in translation, he says, "I love you as the plant that carries in itself the light of hidden flowers." Poets see things so deeply, right? I love you as the plant that carries in itself the light of hidden flowers. So the lover is saying about the beloved, I haven't seen the flowers yet coming from the plant that is you, but I can see in you so deeply that I can see the potential for flowers that emit from you as a kind of light. Isn't that marvelous? Thomas Merton has a similar phrase. He says, there is in all things a hidden fecundity, which is a fancy word we don't use very often, right? Fecundity just means like a kind of a rich fertility, a great potential. He says there is in all things a hidden fecundity, right? That's what we mean by resurrection power. So no matter what it is you're facing, and God knows in my own life, I come across situations where I think, what am I going to do next? How is this situation going to possibly be resolved? I can't imagine a way forward. And then I step back and realize this truth that I've seen played out over and over and over again, that no matter how something may at first appear to be dark, there is in fact a hidden light within it that I can trust. That is resurrection power. Resurrection power tells us there are always more possibilities for life than we may be able to see at any one moment. I hope that this truth is something that you can rely on, that gives you hope and inspiration as you go through the Easter season. God bless you. My name is Frank Krebs. I'm the pastor at Saints Clare and Francis Ecumenical Catholic Community in St. Louis, Missouri, and the presiding bishop-elect of the Ecumenical Catholic Communion.